It was here, at Lake Nyos, that the trouble started. There was an explosion in the heart of the lake which released a cloud of gas. The cloud swept over the surrounding villages, swallowing up everything in its path.
What if a lake could kill?
There's this quiet, silent killer that's lurking about in the trees along the lake's edge.
Imagine a phenomenon so deadly it can wipe out an entire city in the blink of an eye.
In this concentration, the odorless cloud was deadly. It suffocated the people while they slept.
Don't believe me? Well, this lake in Africa may change your mind. Let's dive in, figuratively. The killer lake. Dr. Emmanuel Ngu Mb, after spending the night in Cameroon town Wum, set out on a bike ride back to his home on the morning of August 22, 1986, which was very normal for him. But this ride was about to turn into something far from ordinary. As he pedaled along, he first noticed a dead antelope. Odd, but not alarming enough to question it. So he strapped the dead animal to his bike and continued on. However, things started to get stranger and stranger as he saw more and more animals lying lifeless along the road. Curious MB, instead of heading home, straight decided to pay a visit to a nearby village next to Lake Nyos to see if anyone could explain this bizarre sight. But instead of getting answers, he was met with a scene which looked like the aftermath of an apocalypse. Every home he peeked into revealed a chilling sight. People lying dead, as if some unseen force had struck them down overnight. The entire village was eerily silent, with not a single soul left alive. Confusion and fear gripped MB as he realized the magnitude of what he had stumbled upon. Terrified, MB rushed back to Wum, the same town he was working at and had left in the morning. He reported what he had seen to his superiors. Word spread quickly, reaching the ears of President Paul Biya. When the Cameroonian army and medical teams arrived at the village, they found bodies scattered everywhere, some in bed as if they had passed away peacefully in their sleep, while others were found near a stream or deeper in the forest as if trying to escape from something unseen. The mysterious force not only took the lives of humans and big animals, it just simply wiped out every living creature in its path, including insects, leaving behind a chilling mystery that baffled everyone. The authorities discovered more than 1,700 humans and 3,500 livestock dead in settlements around Lake Nyos, which started catching the attention of everyone worldwide. Medical and food aid started flowing into Cameroon, and different groups of scientists arrived to investigate what had happened. The soldiers digging pits to bury the dead began feeling dizzy, making the scientists realize that whatever caused the disaster was still in the air.
200 meters down, below the surface, a massive quantity of gas still remains. Lake Nyos is in fact a huge time bomb.
After testing the environment, scientists found out the air had unusually high amounts of carbon dioxide and soon discovered why. Lake Nyos has high levels of carbon dioxide and unexpectedly erupted on the night before MB stumbled upon the unfortunate people. The phenomenon released between 100,000 to 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide. This gas cloud initially shot up into the air, but being heavier than air, it settled back down, spreading into nearby villages and suffocating everything in its path.
Water absorbs gas until it can absorb no more. As a result, the lake explodes like soda in a shaken can.
This natural explosion is very rare, and the scientists named it limnic eruption. But it's also known as lake overturn, where a massive amount of carbon dioxide and other gases trapped in the lake's depths suddenly erupts. The tragedy of Lake Nyos wasn't the first limnic eruption that happened in recent times. Just 2 years before, Lake Manaun also exploded because of the same reasons. But the concept of this natural phenomenon wasn't discovered yet, and no extensive investigation was conducted, so it was ruled out as a terrorist attack until the scientists connected the dots after investigating the Lake Nyos disaster. Although there have only been 2 recorded instances of limnic eruptions in history, and while Lake Nyos was a terrifying example, another lake poses an even greater threat. It's called Lake Kivu, located between the border of Congo and Rwanda, and it's around 2,000 times bigger than Lake Nyos. Not only does it have a ton of carbon dioxide trapped in it, just like Nyos, there are high levels of methane gas in its water too, making it a ticking time bomb. And if you are thinking the massive size is the most concerning part, to make matters worse, the areas surrounding Lake Kivu are more densely populated than the two other lakes it shares characteristics with. This means if it ever erupts, the most likely result will be a devastating death toll. Science behind exploding lakes. Lake Kivu, filled with poisonous gases, stretches approximately 90 kilometers in length, but its shape is all over the place. At its widest, it's about 50 kilometers across. This irregular shape makes it tricky to nail down the exact surface area, but estimates put it over 2,700 square kilometers. That's bigger than 90% of the cities worldwide and even larger than a few small countries. The lake's average depth is around 220 meters, but it plunges to a maximum depth of 475 meters. To put that in perspective, if you place the Eiffel Tower on the lake bed, you would still have to dive more than 150 meters deep just to reach the top. This enormous size really highlights just how big of a threat this lake could be if it ever decided to release all those trapped gases. But how did they get there, and what can set off the eruption of these gases into the environment? To find the answers to these questions, let's dive into the chemistry of Lake Kivu's water and its unique geography.
Kivu is one of only 3 known lakes in the world where the specific conditions for this catastrophic event could occur. They are known as the killer lakes.
You might have heard about Africa splitting into 2. Scientifically, it is called the Eastern African Rift Valley. Well, if you don't know about it, I got you covered. Imagine the Earth's crust as a large cracked egg and the East African Rift Valley. It is just like one of those cracks that is slowly getting wider. Basically, a part of the African continent is gradually breaking away, and while it's a super slow process that could take millions of years to split the continent in 2, this movement cranks up the seismic activity in the area. Now, if the egg crack gets bigger, the yolk would come out, right? Well, Earth's crust doesn't really work that way. With tectonic plates drifting apart, it creates a long, narrow depression, which over time would get filled with water. This activity pulls various gases from deep within the Earth's crust to the surface. Lake Kivu also sits along the Eastern Africa Rift Valley, and the continuous seismic activity has dotted the lake bed with hot springs, which keep on fueling the water with gases coming deep within the Earth's crust. Usually, these gases, when released in water, bubble out, but in Kivu, they are released into water well under 300 meters depth. And that's where the magic happens. The high pressure in those depths prevents them from rising and keeps them dissolved in the water. Remember, Lake Nyos released about 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide when it erupted back in 1986, tragically claiming around 1,800 lives. Now, Lake Kivu is a whole different beast, with roughly 300 cubic kilometers of carbon dioxide trapped in it, and those hot springs just keep feeding more into the lake. This means Lake Kivu roughly has over 2 billion tons of carbon dioxide, plus an additional 50 million tons of methane. Yeah, it's no laughing matter. If all of this was left on its own, the lake could release all that built-up gases at this very moment. But thankfully, there is a saving grace to it all. While it's a ticking bomb, there is something which keeps the lake stable. The stratification. Lake Kivu doesn't behave like most deep lakes on the planet, and you can chalk that up to its unique composition and the influx of salty water. In typical lakes, water mixes regularly. Cooler water sinks while warmer water rises, a process called convection. But in Lake Kivu, the water in the deepest layer stays put, almost like there's another lake hiding beneath the surface. This stagnant, deep layer doesn't mix with the upper water because it's much denser, thanks to the dissolved gases and salty water. Plus, sediments from the upper layers sink down, adding to the density of the lower layer. As a result, Lake Kivu has a sharply stratified structure, with a thin transition layer where some mixing occurs, but the waters essentially don't interact. So the water near the lake bed just sits there for thousands of years, not doing much. And this thin line is what is keeping everything from going up in flames, quite literally. This stable stratification keeps the poisonous gases trapped. The bottom layer of Lake Kivu is also anaerobic, meaning there's no oxygen, so oxygen-dependent life can't survive there. However, some specialized bacteria thrive in these conditions. Because of the lack of oxygen, organic matter breaks down incompletely, producing more methane and sometimes hydrogen sulfide, a toxic gas with a rotten egg smell. So the bottom of Lake Kivu hosts a unique ecosystem where organisms have adapted to live with little to no oxygen and a not-so-pleasant odor. Don't think that's all with the distinguishing characteristics, there's more. Temperature plays a role too. Like many lakes, Kivu has warmer water on the surface and colder water at the bottom. However, the hot springs at the bottom release matter that can create localized areas with higher temperatures, even though the average temperature in the deep layer remains relatively stable. So, Lake Kivu is a pretty complex place, with a lot going on beneath the surface. While this stabilizing force has been keeping the danger at bay for quite a long while, long enough for such a large human community to thrive at the shores of Lake Kivu, all of it won't last too long. There are several ways a chain reaction could be set off, causing all the deadly poison to be released at once. Triggers and dangers. What's really going to trigger the explosion? Well, that's still up for debate among scientists. One theory suggests that the gases being continuously added, combined with the lack of water mixing, are making the bottom layer more and more saturated. This scientist estimated that the saturation is about 60%, and once it hits the max, there will be an eruption. It makes sense because, obviously, when there's no more room for gases to dissolve in the water, they will start bubbling up to the gas-free upper layer, creating instability. This chain reaction would rapidly release all the gases into the environment. But that's not to say other factors couldn't trigger a limnic eruption. Think about it like a soda can. When you shake it, the pressure inside increases, and when you open it, the drink comes pouring out. The shake disrupts the equilibrium between the carbon dioxide dissolved in the liquid and the carbon dioxide gas above the liquid, which makes carbon dioxide erupt in tiny bubbles. And did I tell you that soda can usually have 0.3% of carbon dioxide saturation? Now imagine a lake with 60% or even 100% saturation of carbon dioxide in the future. If those gases are released all at once, it would be catastrophic for the people living near Lake Kivu. While humans can't shake a lake, Mother Nature can. It's no surprise that one of the believed triggers for a limnic eruption is seismic activity. It can shake the lake quite violently, causing the gases to bubble up. And once that chain gets going, there is no stopping it. If an eruption happens, a massive cloud of poisonous gas erupting from Kivu could suffocate everything in its path. If something triggers a massive eruption in Lake Kivu, it's not just the gas that's going to be released. A huge amount of water could be displaced as well. This kind of disaster would devastate the region, leaving the area toxic with carbon dioxide for years, making it uninhabitable. An indirect trigger is also one of the root causes of many growing problems in the world. Can you guess what is it? Well, if you live under the rock or are just unable to catch on yet, it is the rising temperatures. The exact effect of temperature changes on the stratification of the lake is still being studied, but it's likely that shifts in temperature will affect the stability of Kivu's layers. You see, the lake has a very specific temperature level in each of its parts that is holding it all together. If that changes drastically in unforeseen ways, well, who knows what will happen. This is all not even mentioning Mount Nyiragongo, which is located nearby. Its seismic activities could potentially cause the lake to release its payload even more quickly. Once in the 2002, it nearly happened too. Rainfall is also indirectly leading to sediments entering the lake sink to its deepest gas-filled layer. This sediment accumulation could potentially destabilize the lake bed and trigger a limnic eruption. If there's low rainfall with increased temperature, more water from the upper layer of the lake will evaporate, reducing the pressure on the lower levels and potentially releasing the trapped gases. This isn't just a theoretical concern. Scientists have found evidence in sediment records suggesting a past limnic eruption occurred for this exact reason. No matter what ends up being the trigger for an eruption, the devastating effects will be the same. A dense cloud of carbon dioxide and methane would kick out the oxygen from air, leading to causing people to suffocate. The waters could flood homes, and unlike Lake Nyos, Lake Kivu has the added risk of a methane explosion, which is highly flammable. This could result in a catastrophic methane release, with fires burning houses and vegetation. The aquatic life. Unlike other lakes where fish can thrive in almost all layers, Lake Kivu only has roughly 20 to 30% of its water in the upper layer suitable for fish and other aquatic life. So, relative to its enormous size, the fish fauna in Kivu is quite limited, with only 29 species. Of these, 4 species were not native but were introduced into the lake's waters. If you're wondering why so many people choose to live around a lake that could potentially explode, this might explain it. Despite its reputation as a killer lake and the limited variety of fish, Kivu is still the largest local source of fish in Rwanda. It produces over 20,000 tons of fish annually, providing livelihoods for 500,000 people in Congo and Rwanda. Interestingly, half of the fish species found in Kivu are unique to this lake and not found anywhere else in the world. But the most commonly caught fish is the Lake Tanganyika sardine. This species wasn't originally from Kivu, but was introduced because of its high nutritional value and rapid growth rate. Their small size makes them easy to catch and process, making them an affordable food option for the people living near Kivu. It's fascinating how nature works. The same lake that provides food and livelihood could one day, without warning, turn against them and claim their lives. Fishermen around Lake Kivu still use traditional wooden boats and old fishing methods, but the way they do it might make you want to visit this ticking time bomb. The fishermen sing in a language called Amashi, which is relatively unknown outside their community. They move their oars in sync, dancing to the rhythm of songs and whistles performed by the captain all night, heading back to shore before dawn. This is their routine all year round, except for 2 months, usually between July and October. This period is known as the biological break, taken to ensure the fish population can recover from heavy fishing. Fishing of any sort is strictly prohibited during the biological break, but there are always rule benders who fish illegally to gain an upper hand in the market when sardines are scarce. However, the local fishermen, who understand the necessity of this break for the lake's ecosystem and long-term health, actually support this regulation and even help authorities catch illegal fishermen. A dip and aftermath. If fish can survive in Lake Kivu, then taking a swim can't be that harmful, right? Actually, yes, it's safer to swim in than many other lakes because it lacks crocodiles or any other dangerous aquatic creatures, and the surface water is often clear. So turns out the killer lake, with its calmness and often clear waters, tempts everyone to take a dip, making it quite popular among locals and visitors alike. With the surface water temperature around 25 degrees Celsius, you might even forget the dangers lurking beneath the surface. And don't worry, the lake won't suddenly explode while you are swimming. Scientists have been monitoring the area around the basin for over 2 decades. They concluded that Kivu erupts roughly every few thousand years, based on fossils indicating multiple local extinctions in the area thousands of years apart. To ensure safety, they have deployed various sensors at different depths in the lake to track changes in pressure and temperature. Significant changes in these factors would indicate that the stratification layer has been disrupted or is shifting, potentially leading to an explosion of gases from the lake's depths. They also regularly analyze the levels of carbon dioxide and methane in the lake water to check if these trapped gases are moving upward. So, scientists would have enough time to warn you to get out of the water. But what if an unforeseen seismic event shook the ground so hard that you didn't have time to react. It sounds terrifying, but you might not feel much pain. When the carbon dioxide displaces the oxygen, you would likely lose consciousness and not experience what your body goes through. If you somehow remain conscious, the carbon dioxide-saturated air will give you severe headaches and make you dizzy. With no oxygen, your body wouldn't have enough energy to swim to safety, so you can guess where that ends. We have already discussed the potential impact on humans and other living creatures around the lake and how the methane could ignite, causing fires. But now let's talk about the long-term effects. Will life ever be able to survive again in the areas and cities surrounding the lake? After the devastating loss of lives and significant damage to infrastructure, the first immediate issue would be a refugee crisis. People who are far enough away might survive, but for an extended period, the region will be filled with hazardous gases, making it impossible for anyone to live there. More than 2 million people could be displaced. Over the next few years, the air will clear out with all hazardous gases getting dispersed, but life around the lake won't just bounce back. A large portion of the population there relies on fishing for a living, and following the eruption, the lake would be empty of fish or have very few remaining. It would take many years for the surface water to return to its previous state, as it would now be highly contaminated, making it unsuitable for fish and unsafe for human consumption. Without protein from sardines, no food from the destroyed vegetation around the lake, no proper drinking water, and ruined infrastructure, the recovery process for the region would be extremely challenging and prolonged. There's a chance that the area could remain abandoned for decades or never fully return to its pre-eruption state. Lake Kivu powering Rwanda.
Kivuwat is the country's first attempt at a large-scale gas extraction. For a region in such dire need of electricity, Kivu's gas is an attractive proposition.
Did you know that the biggest contributor to electricity production worldwide is now natural gas, and it is primarily composed of methane? Yes, the same gas that's trapped in the depths of Lake Kivu. A great source of fuel sitting there waiting to explode. People weren't going to just let it be, right? So, scientists and engineers have been working on figuring out how to turn this potential disaster into a goldmine of energy. While they state the primary purpose is to make the lake safer by gradually removing this harmful explosive gas, the potential for energy production is also significant. There's like 500 million tons of methane packed into Lake Kivu, so even if humans suck out a bunch of it, that won't eliminate the risk completely, but it will slowly reduce the saturation of the lake's bottom layer. Well, extracting this fuel isn't very simple, like inserting a pipe into a gas chamber and sucking out the contents. Remember, the gases deep down are dissolved in the water due to the high pressure. So the process starts with pumping water from great depths up to the surface. As the water rises, the pressure decreases significantly, causing the dissolved gases to bubble out. From the released gases, methane is separated and the carbon dioxide and water are pumped back down to maintain the stability of the bottom layer. The extracted methane is then used as fuel for boilers in thermal power stations. So it turns out this killer lake, which already supports livelihoods through fishing, might also boost the region's economy in another way, by providing free fuel to generate electricity for hundreds of thousands of people. Plus, the mining and power stations will generate revenue and create more jobs. One major energy project tapping into this potential is Kivuwat. It started back in 2016 and is currently in its first phase. The completion of this phase will lead to the generation of 26 megawatts of electricity per day. In the future, they plan to expand this to a whopping 100 megawatts per day. However, the journey of Kivuwat hasn't been easy. Digging deep into this dangerous lake has all the critics watching closely. Many scientists still argue that extracting methane could disrupt the stability of the lake's layers and potentially trigger the very eruption they are trying to prevent. Experts are concerned that this could damage the lake and the entire surrounding valley. Is it a venture to slow down the gas accumulation in the lake? Or is it all about making money off of a catastrophe and waiting? Well, no one is quite sure. So every step Kivuat takes must be done with careful evaluation, ensuring total safety. They have no margin for error, as any mistake could have serious consequences. And that brings us to the end of our journey, uncovering the secrets of Africa's lake with the potential to cause one of the greatest tragedies of all time that's currently supporting the people around it. Let's hope that the methane extraction efforts work in humanity's favor. So would you dare to visit this lake? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, along with a thumbs up. If you enjoyed this video, why not drop a like to show your support? For more videos like this coming your way, subscribe and hit that little bell icon. Watch out for deadly lakes in your area. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.